It's 2:17 in the morning. Somewhere on the Trans-Canada Highway, just past Thunder Bay, a truck is parked in a Walmart lot. The engine is off, the parking lot lights are humming, and from the outside, it looks like any other rig, just sitting there, dark and still. But inside that truck, a man named Dale is cooking pasta. He's been behind the wheel for 14 years. He hasn't slept in a hotel since 2021. He hasn't needed to. Because that truck, that 80,000-pound machine that crossed 3 provincial borders today, is also his bedroom, his kitchen, his bathroom, and the place where he calls his daughter in Sudbury every single night at 8 p.m. to hear about her day. To you, it's just a parked truck. To Dale, it's home. Most people assume Canadian long-haul drivers spend their nights in cheap roadside motels somewhere off the highway. Here's the truth. Many of them never check into a hotel at all, not for days, not for weeks, sometimes not for months. Instead, they eat, sleep, shower, shave, and, yes, use the bathroom. Inside a space smaller than most people's walk-in closets, parked next to a highway in the middle of nowhere at 2 in the morning. And tonight, I'm going to answer every question you didn't know you had about life inside that truck. How do they sleep when there's a diesel engine running 10 feet from their head? How do they shower when they're 600 kilometers from the nearest city? Where exactly do they go to the bathroom at 3 in the morning in a truck stop parking lot? And what do they actually eat? Because it's probably not what you think. Let's start with the most important question. Why do they live in the truck in the first place? In Canada, there are currently over 3 on 1,000 licensed commercial truck drivers on the road. A significant portion of them are what the industry calls OTR drivers, over the road. These aren't the drivers making local deliveries and sleeping in their own beds every night. OTR drivers take the long hauls, the runs that cross provincial lines, sometimes multiple provinces, sometimes all the way from Vancouver to Halifax, a trip covering over 6,000 kilometers before it's done, and they don't come home after each run. They stay out, sometimes for 2 weeks, sometimes for 3, sometimes longer. Now think about that for a second. If you had to stay in a hotel every single night on the road, what would that cost you? A basic room near a truck stop in Ontario runs between $90 and $130 a night, sometimes more. Multiply that by 20 nights a month, which is conservative for an OTR driver. That's anywhere from $1,800 to $2,600 every single month just to sleep. Over a year, that's between $21,000 and $31,000 gone, just on hotels, before food, before fuel, before anything else. So it doesn't take long to figure out that living in the truck isn't just convenient, it's the only thing that makes financial sense. But here's what most people don't realize. The average Canadian OTR driver spends somewhere around 200 nights a year away from home. That means many of them spend more nights inside their truck than in their own bedroom. Dale told me he did the math 3 years ago. He worked out that he'd spent more consecutive nights in his Kenworth than he had in his house in Timmins since 2019. Not because he had to, because by that point, the truck had become more familiar than the house. It's where he decompresses after a 12-hour drive through the prairies. It's where he calls his daughter. It's where he wakes up, makes coffee, and watches the sun come up over the Saskatchewan flatlands before the next run. The truck isn't a vehicle with a bed in the back. It's home. And like any home, the first thing you need to figure out is where you're going to sleep. Here's something most people never think about. Falling asleep in a truck stop parking lot is nothing like falling asleep in a quiet bedroom. Picture this. You've just driven 11 hours across northern Ontario. Your back is stiff. Your eyes are tired. You've been watching the same white line for most of the day. And all you want to do is close them. But outside your window, there are 40 other trucks, all of them running their engines, all of them humming and vibrating at the exact same low frequency that makes it impossible to relax. A Petro-Canada truck stop in Woodstock on a Thursday night sounds like a generator farm that never shuts off. This is the #1 complaint among new Canadian truck drivers. Not the loneliness, not the food, the noise. So how do they deal with it? Modern sleeper cabs are surprisingly well insulated. The walls are thicker than most people expect. The windows are double-layered, and nearly every driver has heavy blackout curtains that seal off the bunk completely from the cab. Once those curtains close, the truck becomes its own world. Then there's the temperature issue. Because sleeping in a truck in Canada isn't just uncomfortable when it's cold, it's dangerous. In January, in Winnipeg, in a cab with no heat running, the temperature inside an unpowered truck drops faster than most people realize. This is where something called an APU comes in, an auxiliary power unit, a small generator that runs independently from the main engine, keeping the heat on, the lights running, and the bunk at a comfortable temperature without burning through a full tank of diesel overnight. If you've ever seen footage of trucking at 40 degrees Celsius on the prairies, you already know that staying warm isn't just about comfort. At those temperatures, it's about survival. Here's the part that actually surprises most people. Driver surveys consistently show that many Canadian OTR drivers report sleeping better in their cab than they do at home. The routine is the same every night. The space is familiar. There are no kids running down the hallway, no dog on the bed, just the curtains, the hum of the APU, and 8 hours before the next run. Under Transport Canada's hours of service regulations, a commercial driver cannot exceed 13 hours of driving in a day and must take mandatory rest before continuing. So rest isn't just optional, it's the law. But not all sleeping setups are created equal, because some Canadian drivers aren't sleeping in a basic cab. They're sleeping in something that costs more than most people's houses. Most people picture a truck sleeper as a small box behind the driver's seat. A thin mattress, a tiny pillow, enough room to lie down if you don't move too much. And for a lot of trucks, that's accurate. But then there's the other end of the spectrum. Custom sleeper cab builders, companies like Airy Legacy Sleepers, Bolt Custom Trucks, and ICT Sleepers, build rigs that are frankly embarrassing to compare to the average studio apartment. We're talking full-size beds, not bunk beds, not fold-out cots. Actual queen-size mattresses with real bedding, built-in cabinetry, LED lighting systems, hardwood floors, flat-screen TVs mounted to the wall, climate control with individual settings. Some have their own onboard shower tucked into a corner with a glass door and proper water pressure. One ARE Legacy build features a full kitchen, a dedicated lounge area, and a complete bathroom. Inside, a truck. Now here's the number that makes people stop scrolling. Entry-level custom sleepers start at around $150,000 Canadian. Mid-range builds sit between $250,000 and $350,000. And the top end, fully custom-built rigs, some go for $500,000. A few have crossed $600,000. To put that into perspective, the median home price in Canada right now sits at roughly $700,000. Some Canadian drivers are living in something worth close to the average Canadian house. Except theirs has a diesel engine, a Transport Canada certified axle rating, and can travel from Toronto to Vancouver in 4 days. Is it excessive? Maybe. But when the truck is your home for 10 months out of the year, the line between vehicle and living space stops making a lot of sense. And when you've already saved $25,000 a year by not paying for hotels, a custom sleeper starts looking less like a luxury and more like a rational long-term investment. Dale's truck isn't a $600,000 custom build. It's a mid-range Kenworth with a decent sleeper, an APU, a 12-volt fridge, and blackout curtains he bought himself at a truck stop in Regina. He says it's the most comfortable place he's ever slept in his life. Better than my couch, he told me. And I paid a lot for that couch. Let's address the question that everyone is thinking about, but nobody wants to ask first. Where do Canadian truck drivers go to the bathroom? It's a completely fair question, and the answer is more organized than you'd expect. For most OTR drivers in Canada, the primary solution is the truck stop. Petro-Canada, Husky, Esso, and independent highway stops are essentially small cities built specifically for drivers. They have restaurants, fuel, parking, laundry, and full bathroom facilities available around the clock. A Petro-Canada truck stop on the 401 at 3 in the morning has cleaner bathrooms than most gas stations you'd find during the day. But truck stops aren't always conveniently located when nature calls at 2 a.m. somewhere between Kenora and Dryden. So some drivers keep a portable toilet in the cab. Simple, practical, exactly as glamorous as it sounds. And then there are the custom sleepers we just talked about. Several high-end builds include a proper onboard toilet, small, compact, but functional. Because when you've spent $400,000 on a truck, you probably don't want to be walking across a dark parking lot in -20 at 3 a.m. in northern Manitoba. Now let's talk about showers, because this is where it gets genuinely impressive. Most major Canadian truck stops, Petro-Canada, Husky, Esso highway locations, offer private shower rooms. And we're not talking about a curtain and a drain. These are actual private rooms. A sink, a toilet, a full shower with adjustable water pressure, clean towels between every single use, a lock on the door. Petro-Canada operates a rewards program. Drivers earn shower credits every time they fuel up, buy enough diesel, and a long-haul truck burns thousands of liters a month. And your shower is completely free. Most professional Canadian drivers have never paid for a shower on the road in their entire career. Dale hasn't paid for a shower since 2018. Some drivers say they take better showers on the road than at home. And given that these rooms are cleaned between every use, they might not be wrong. The higher-end custom sleepers skip the truck stop entirely. Onboard showers mean drivers never have to leave the vehicle at all, which, depending on how cold it is outside and how far you are from the nearest town, feels less like a luxury and more like common sense. Here's what most people picture when they think about a Canadian truck driver and food. A gas station hot dog that's been rotating since Tuesday, a bag of chips, and an energy drink from a Petro-Canada counter at midnight. A greasy breakfast at a highway diner at 6 a.m. that costs $22 and tastes like the 1980s. And look, that exists. Nobody's pretending it doesn't. But the reality for a large number of OTR drivers is completely different. Many of them cook, not metaphorically, not heat something up. They actually cook full meals inside the cab, parked in a truck stop lot somewhere on the Trans-Canada. Here's the math that explains why. A basic meal at a highway truck stop in Ontario runs anywhere from $14 to $22. See, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's between $294 and $462 every single week just on food. Over a month on the road, that's easily $1,200 to $1,800 gone on meals alone. So Canadian drivers started getting creative. Modern sleeper cabs are surprisingly well equipped for cooking. Most have a 12-volt refrigerator that runs off the truck's electrical system, keeping food fresh for days. Many drivers add a microwave mounted to the wall, a portable induction cooktop, or a compact air fryer that plugs directly into the APU. Some have a small propane grill they set up outside the cab at truck stops, a folding table, a camp chair, and a parking lot somewhere in Saskatchewan becomes a perfectly decent outdoor kitchen at sunset. Dale makes chili every Sunday. He preps it before he leaves, freezes it in portions, and reheats it through the week. He told me the trick is a good insulated cooler and knowing which truck stops have microwaves accessible to drivers. "I eat better on the road than I do at home," he said. "At home, I forget to eat. Out here, cooking is the highlight of the afternoon." The drivers who last on the road long-term aren't just good at driving. They're good at building a life inside a very small space. They figure out the sleep. They figure out the bathroom. They figure out the food. They figure out how to be productive, comfortable, and connected to the people they love. All from a cab that's smaller than most people's bathroom. So the next time you're driving down the 401 and you see a truck parked in a Walmart lot at midnight or a Canadian Tire parking lot at 2 a.m. on the edge of Brampton, that's not just a parked truck. That's someone's bedroom, someone's kitchen, someone's living room, the place where they call their kids good night, watch whatever they've downloaded, and decompress after a day that started before sunrise, somewhere 3 provinces away. To most people, a truck is just something they move over for on the highway. But for the driver behind that wheel, for Dale and the 301,000 others like him on Canadian roads, it's something else entirely. It's where they sleep, eat, shower, and call home, sometimes for weeks without a break, all while moving through a country so large that most Canadians have never actually driven across it, all while keeping the shelves stocked, the hospitals supplied, the construction sites running, the grocery stores full. And honestly, most of them wouldn't trade it. Now I want to hear from you. If you're an OTR driver, Canadian or otherwise, what's the one thing about life on the road that most people would never guess in a million years? The strangest night you've had in the cab. The weirdest place you've ever parked. The moment you realized the truck had actually become home. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've never driven a truck in your life, what surprised you most in this video? What did you assume that turned out to be completely wrong? Every comment helps more Canadians discover what it actually takes to keep this country moving. If this is the kind of content you want, real stories from inside the industries that run Canada every single day, hit subscribe. There is a lot more of this coming. See you next time.